Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Whether you are new here or a regular, my name is Jessica and I'm excited to have you here with me today. This video is going to be a little different today because we are talking about my journey with adenomyosis, my symptoms, and everything that has led me up to finally being referred to a specialist. So if you're ready, grab a cup of your favorite drink, grab a little snacky snack, and buckle up for this part of my health journey. I want to take some time today to really talk about what has been going on with my body over the years and what has led me to this point. This is something that didn't just start recently. This has been something I have dealt with for most of my life. My period started when I was 10 years old. And honestly, from the very beginning, my experiences was not what I would consider normal. When I was 10 and 11 years old, I would wake up in the middle of the night crying because I was in so much pain. I remember waking up and going to my mom and telling her that I was hurting so bad, and she would give me some Tylenol or ibuprofen and tell me to go back to bed. At that age, I didn't understand what I was experiencing could be a sign that something was wrong. I didn't know there was a reason behind it. I just thought this was what happened when you got your period. I thought this was something I was just supposed to deal with. By the time I became a teenager, I was already somewhat used to the pain because I had been experiencing it for years. But just because I was used to it doesn't mean it was normal. My periods were still extremely painful. They were still heavy. They were still exhausting. I just learned how to push through because I didn't know any other way. As I got older, things didn't get better. They got worse. Especially over the last decade or so, my symptoms slowly continued to progress until they started affecting almost every part of my life. What started as painful periods turned into something much more intense. I started dealing with severe cramping, extremely heavy bleeding, pelvic pain, nausea, dizziness, lightheadedness, and exhaustion. There are days where my body completely takes over and I don't have a choice but to stop. There are days where I feel like I am fighting through something before my period even starts. Because one thing I have learned about my body is that the symptoms don't just appear once my period begins. In the days leading up to my period, my body starts giving me warning signs. I start feeling extremely tired. I get nauseous. I get lightheaded. I feel like I'm coming down with something, like I'm getting sick. And then when my actual period starts, everything gets worse. The pain, bleeding, the exhaustion. And one of the symptoms that has become a huge issue for me is the bloating. And I don't mean just normal bloating, I mean severe bloating. Kind of bloating where I can look like I am 6 months pregnant. It can get so uncomfortable that I don't even feel like myself. My clothes fit differently, my body feels heavy, and it just adds another layer to everything else that I'm already dealing with. And unfortunately, the symptoms don't just disappear the moment my period ends. Even after the bleeding stops, it can take several days, sometimes even up to a week, before I start feeling like myself again. The exhaustion, the bloating, the fatigue, the feeling that my body is still recovering, it all takes time. And that is one of the hardest parts about this, because this isn't just having a bad period. This affects my entire life. There have been times where I have gotten ready, made plans, left my house, and then had to turn right back around because the bleeding was so heavy. There have been times where I knew I couldn't continue with what I was doing because my body was telling me that I needed to stop. My doctors have even told me that when I'm on my period, especially when things are at their worst, I shouldn't be trying to continue life like normal. They told me that I should be at home, laying in bed with my feet up and resting. And while I understand why they say that, the reality is that life doesn't stop every month. I still have kids, I still have responsibilities, I still have things that need to be done. But sometimes my body simply will not let me. And that is one of the hardest parts, because I'm not someone who wants to sit around and do nothing. I am an adventurous person. I love exploring. I love hiking. I love seeing nature. I love going to abandoned places. I love traveling. I love making memories with my family. That is who I am. But there are times where my own body becomes the thing standing between me and the life that I want to live. Over the years, my doctors and I have tried different options to help manage what's happening. I've tried different forms of birth control. I've tried things that were supposed to help control my symptoms and make my periods more manageable. We were trying to find something that would give me relief without immediately jumping into surgery. An IUD was actually the last option we tried before discussing more serious options. At that time, my doctor did not want to rush into a hysterectomy because he felt I was too young and wanted to try other options first. He was concerned about doing something permanent at my age, so we continued looking for something that could help. That is when we decided to try the IUD. Unfortunately, from the very beginning, it was a difficult experience. When I had the IUD placed, it was extremely painful. Honestly, the insertion itself was one of the most painful experiences I had ever gone through. And after it was placed, my body did not react the way we hoped it would. I started spotting bright red blood every single day for almost 4 months straight. Every single day. It wasn't just occasional spotting, it was constant. And during that time, me and my husband went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee for our honeymoon. If you have been following my channel for a while, you may remember those videos because I actually made content during that trip. I personally have not gone back and watched those videos since I posted them, but that trip is something I will never forget, because what was supposed to be an amazing adventure and a special memory became one of the scariest experiences of my life. I'm someone who loves adventure. I love exploring. exploring new places. I love seeing things that most people don't get to see. So while we were in Gatlinburg, we decided to hike through the mountains and look for waterfalls. And at the beginning, it was exactly the kind of adventure that I love. But then everything changed. While we were hiking, my body started struggling. I became extremely dehydrated. I started feeling very sick. I even lost my sight and started throwing up. And eventually, I became so weak that I couldn't continue on my own. I remember there were people on the mountain who stopped to help me. There was even a doctor there. She was great. Just complete strangers were checking on me and trying to make sure I was okay. They were giving me oranges, they were giving me water, they were doing everything they could do to help me while waiting for assistance. Eventually, someone had to come up the mountain to help me. They brought supplies with them and they had to put an IV in my arm right there on the side of the mountain because I was so dehydrated. After that, I became extremely cold. They wrapped me in a blanket and tried to help me warm up and stabilize. Unfortunately, by that point, the sun was already starting to go down. More people came up to help me safely back down the mountain. They had flashlights. They had special equipment on the bottom of their shoes to help them grip and not lose their footing. And they slowly guided me down because it was no longer safe for me to try to get down on my own. By the time we got back to the parking lot, it was already 10:30 at night, and they asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital. But honestly, at that point, I just wanted to go back to the room and I wanted to rest. I wanted to sleep. I wanted to recover from what had just happened. So we went back to the room. And when we got there, I got in the shower. And shortly after, my husband came in to check on me because obviously he was worried about everything that had just happened. And while he was checking on me, he noticed there was blood. It wasn't a large amount. It wasn't what I would later experience after having my IUD removed, but it was noticeable. And it was another reminder that my body was not acting the way it should. At that point, I had already been dealing with months of bright red spotting every single day from the IUD. And even though that trip was an amazing memory in some ways, it also became a moment where I realized how much my health was starting to affect my life. After we came home from Gatlinburg, I actually stopped posting on YouTube for a while. And honestly, it wasn't because I didn't want to make videos anymore. It was because I didn't feel like myself. I was losing energy. I was constantly tired. I wasn't feeling better. It felt like everything was getting worse instead of improving. And when you are constantly dealing with your body not cooperating, it becomes really hard to have motivation and energy to continue the things that you love. About 6 months after the Gatlinburg trip, I decided that I wanted the IUD removed. There were a few reasons for that. One was because I did not like the weight gain that I experienced after getting it or the depression that it gave me. Another reason was because I could literally feel it inside of me. And honestly, I hated that feeling. It was uncomfortable. It didn't feel right in my body. I didn't like knowing that it was there. So I went back to my doctor and I asked him to remove it. And he removed it that day. That afternoon, I started bleeding a little bit. My doctor told me there was a good chance that within the next week or so, I would start my period again. But instead, I started my period that same day. And then it didn't stop. I continued bleeding extremely heavily for 28 days straight. Not just normal bleeding, extremely heavy bleeding. My body would not regulate. On about day 25, I ended up in the emergency room because bleeding would not stop. That was when I was diagnosed with a dysfunctionally bleeding uterus. And a day or two after my emergency room visit, I went back to my gynecologist and explained everything that had happened. During that same appointment, he prescribed me what he called an all natural progesterone to try to help my body regulate and stop the bleeding. He also talked to me about a uterine ablation. At that time, he told me that he felt like I was too young for a hysterectomy and that he believed a uterine ablation would be a better option for me. The goal was to find something that could help my bleeding and symptoms without jumping straight into a hysterectomy. However, at that time, I did not have a way to pay for the procedure. So he told me to reach back out when I was able to move forward and we would discuss the next steps. I took the progesterone for about 3 or 4 days, but unfortunately, I did not react well to it. It honestly felt like it was burning a hole in my stomach, so I stopped taking it. Thankfully, a few days after stopping it, the bleeding finally stopped. But my body still needed time to recover. It took about another 9 months before my periods started to feel normal again. And even though things eventually settled down, I knew something still wasn't right. After that appointment, I did not go back and see him for about a year and a half. During that time, I continued living with the same problems: the heavy periods, the pain, the exhaustion, the symptoms that affected my daily life. I learned how to keep pushing through, but I was still struggling. Recently, though, I decided it was time to go back. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand what was happening with my body. And when I went back, things were different. This time, my doctor recognized that this was something that needed a deeper look. Instead of just trying another temporary solution, he wanted me to see a specialist. And honestly, that was a huge moment for me because after years of dealing with this, it finally felt like I was moving toward real answers, not just another medication, not just another thing to try, but actually figuring out what could be causing everything that I have been experiencing. At this point, my doctor believes that adenomyosis could be the reason behind my symptoms, but I have not seen the specialist yet, so I don't have all the answers. That is actually the next step in this journey. The specialist will be able to take a deeper look and help determine what is the best option moving forward. Whether that means a uterine ablation or whether a hysterectomy would be the better option for me. And honestly, I have a lot of emotions about finally being at this point because for so many years, I have felt like I was just trying to manage symptoms. I was trying different things. I was trying to push through. I was trying to live my life while also dealing with something that was constantly working against me. But now, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I am getting closer to understanding what is actually happening inside my body. And while I'm hopeful, I'm also really nervous because anytime you're dealing with something that has affected your life this much, there are a lot of unknowns. I don't know what the specialist is going to say. I don't know what option they will recommend. I don't know what the final outcome of this journey will be. But I do know that I am ready to have those conversations. And while I'm waiting for the next step, this is still affecting my everyday life. Just a few days ago, I experienced another reminder of how much this impacts me. My family and I went to the beach to celebrate my dad's birthday. This was his second birthday without him, and it was really important to all of us that we were able to come together and celebrate his life. It was me, my kids, my siblings, their kids, and my stepmom. Everyone was there to spend time together, swim, play in the ocean, get in the pool, just make memories as a family. And I was really looking forward to it. But on the second night we were there, I started my period once again. And the next morning, while everybody else was getting up and getting ready to enjoy the beach, I was dealing with my symptoms. I couldn't get in the ocean, couldn't get in the pool, couldn't do the things everyone else was doing. And one of the hardest parts is that I can't even use tampons because, for one, they're super painful, and two, the bleeding is so heavy that they're not enough for me. So instead of being out there making memories with my family, I had to sit on the sidelines. I had to watch everyone else swim and play and enjoy the water while I sat there in the heat. I did my best to still be involved. When everyone got in the hot tub, I put my feet in and sat with them so I could still spend time together. But it wasn't the same. And that was really difficult because that day was the day we were celebrating my dad. It was supposed to be about family. It was supposed to be about memories. It was supposed to be about being together. But instead, my period became another thing that kept me from fully participating. And that is one of the hardest parts about dealing with something like this. It's not just the pain, it's not just the bleeding, it's the moments you miss. It's watching other people make memories while you're sitting on the side, wishing your body would just cooperate. And that is what makes this so difficult. This is not just one bad day. This is not just a few hours of discomfort. This affects weeks of my life every single month. And that is why I am so ready for this next step, because I don't want my life to continue being controlled by my cycle. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to explore. I want to make memories with my family without constantly wondering if my body is going to stop me. I want to be able to say yes to things without immediately worrying about whether my period will interfere. And I know that I am not the only woman who has experienced something like this. I know there are other women who have spent years dealing with pain, heavy bleeding, exhaustion, and symptoms that others can't see. I know there are women who have felt like they were not being heard. And that is one of the reasons why I want to share my story. Not because I have all the answers, not because this journey is over, but because I want to document the process. I want to be honest about what this is like. And I want anyone else going through something similar to know they are not alone. This is only the beginning of my journey. I don't know exactly where this road is going to lead, but I do know that I am finally moving towards answers. And I am finally moving towards getting my life back. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my story and for being here with me through this part of my health journey. That's the end of this video for now. So if you like the video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and it helps me to continue to make awesome content just for you guys. So hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more exciting content. And until next time, stay awesome. Bye.